A guy has been lying in one of the hospitals in Tokyo for a long time. He has been chained to this bed for 3 years. His body is completely motionless, and only his mind is still functioning. The guy could neither cry, nor laugh, nor make sounds, only think about what was happening around him. His name was Ben, and his only entertainment was watching the TV that hung on the wall, where only boring sports matches were constantly playing. There were often people in his room, such as his mother, who often shed tears seeing her son slowly die. That night the doctor said disappointing words to her that his illness was progressing very quickly and her son could stop breathing at any moment. The guy was very afraid of his death, but he came to terms with his situation and was already prepared for it. The device that showed his state of health issued a prolonged squeak, which indicated that the patient was no longer breathing, and before his eyes he saw only darkness. At that moment he realized that his time had come, but suddenly he heard someone's enchanting voice, which told him to wake up immediately. She was a girl of extraordinary beauty. Her hair was thick and bright like the sun, and her body was perfectly shaped. Ben slowly rubbed his eyes, not understanding what was going on here, and then he was horrified, because he could not move because of his illness. But now he could easily move his arm. But his shock was abruptly interrupted by the same girl, calling him the owner, which surprised the guy. She was glad that Ben finally woke up, but the guy was surprised by the picture he saw and asked her who she was, and then the main character fell into a stupor for the second time, because he had just spoken the words out loud himself. But he was interrupted again by the beauty, saying that her name is Jenny and today she is his personal security. Ben didn't understand what was going on here. He was embarrassed that such a girl was sitting on him, who was also dressed revealingly. The main character embarrassedly said that he was already 18 and Jenna was so beautiful that he could get hard, and then he was shocked. Ben's scream rang out throughout the thicket of the forest, and only the deaf could not have heard it. The main character was incredibly surprised that he got hard and felt these painful sensations below. It was all like an enchanting dream. He was supposed to die, but for some reason he ended up here, and besides, his illness, which tormented him all these years, fleetingly disappeared. Jenna was surprised by the guy's reaction, and asked if her owner was okay. Having calmed down, Ben replied that he was fine, and he wondered why the girl called him master. She briefly explained to him who she was and what this place was, as well as who Ben was around these parts. The main character did not understand anything from what was said because the girl said that he was the heir to the Protos chosen by the heavenly Lord Kel. Jenna explained that the Protos is the only surviving place inhabited by humanity. That is, the king of the Protos is the king of people. The guy grinned and said, waving his hands, that Kel could not have reborn him from another world. This is not scientific and looks like nonsense. Smiling, the girl sharply bit her finger to make her bleed. Jenna decisively said that since the owner does not believe her, she will provide him with evidence. The smell of her blood should attract predators in the area, and then Ben, having met them, should understand everything. Suddenly, a loud roar of thousands of souls was heard throughout the thicket. They resembled the growl of a pack of wolves, people, and bears at the same time. Footsteps were heard behind Ben, which barely followed the ground, but at the same time quickly overtook them. The main character turned around and saw a terrible picture. It was a horde of zombies who came here to the smell of blood. Seeing how horrified Ben was, Jenna said that these are the same predators and now they are filling almost the entire earth. Determination was visible on her face. She added that these pale-faced people turned our world into absolute horror. At that moment, Ben believed what he was being told and stood in front of the girl, ordering her to leave. Resolutely, the hero went forward, saying that he would deal with them, because finally he could move his muscles and it was time for him to warm up after many years spent without moving. Jenna asked if he was afraid because there were so many of them, to which Ben replied that of course he was afraid and terrified at the sight of all these zombies, but he was even more afraid of seeing such a beauty die at their hands. The girl felt pleased by the words spoken and a smile appeared on her face. Suddenly she flew into the sky and said to herself that Mr. Kell had chosen a worthy heir. Ben looked again at the flock of zombies. In their eyes he no longer saw anything that would remind him of people, only an animal desire to dine on fresh flesh. Somewhere all his heroism suddenly disappeared, and he thought that since they were corpses they were moving slowly, so the best solution would be to run away from them. But the corpses didn't think so. They were quite nimble because their hunger gave them strength. Suddenly everything disappeared somewhere, and Ben heard a divine voice inside himself that told him that he had seen his courage, and that the guy should stop being afraid. Surprised, Ben asked what this place was and who was talking to him. The divine voice spoke to him again and said that this was his inner strength, and they had the same soul. Meanwhile, Jenna, watching the battlefield, thought that if Kel's consciousness really still remained in this world, then it should manifest itself right now. The one and only power, the endless darkness, it must appear at this very moment. Suddenly, a purple light began to leak from the crowd of zombies, which illuminated the gloomy clearing. The zombies surrounding Ben felt that emotion that reminded them that they were human. It was pain. The purple ball that surrounded the main character began to scatter zombies in different directions as if the wind was sweeping away leaves from a tree. In the center of the crowd of zombies, only our hero remained, surrounded by a purple glow. This was his hidden inner strength. Ben looked at his hands, through which energy flowed, and thought that this was the feeling of rebirth. From the corpses that the guy scattered, all that remained were purple particles, which were incredibly beautiful. In an instant, they all rushed towards him, causing the main character to freeze in horror. But there was no need to be afraid, because every particle gave energy, and the guy felt a sharp surge of strength. The hero felt a feeling of warmth in his body. All this energy is now concentrated in him. Suddenly he heard something moving towards him. These steps were already familiar to him, because it was the same girl. She shouted that there was no need to panic, because this was exactly the master's ability, namely endless darkness. Endless darkness can not only absorb energy around, but also during battle from opponents. The hero was not very happy with what Jenna said. He thought that this world has supernatural powers. Apparently his illness was cured precisely thanks to these forces. Suddenly the girl fell to her knees in front of the guy, and shouted that the Protos would not last a day without his owner. She confidently told the hero to return to the Protos and inherit the crown. Ben thought that becoming the king of the Protos was not the happiness he wanted. After some time, the guy saw dragons in the sky, hovering over the walls of the city. Jenna asked why the owner was not very happy that he should become the king of the Protos, but she never heard an answer. Ben had a look of exhaustion on his face, and he couldn't think about anything other than food. The hero answered the girl that the most important thing they must do now is find a place where they can eat. When they approached the majestic wall, Ben asked if this was the city she told him about. They looked at a huge wall that seemed to have no end, which protected the city from predators. The guy was surprised that there was no gate in the wall, and hoped that they did not need to climb such a huge structure. Jenna reassured him by saying that it was just a Protoss security system and any resident could open the gate. She put her hand to the wall, and at the same moment the wall began to tremble, triggering its internal mechanisms. The girl said that the wall is 700 meters high and 20 meters thick, which makes it possible to deter any predators. The door opened and a mechanical voice echoed down the corridor greeting Jenna. Although everything looked abandoned from the outside, inside the Protoss the inhabitants can still lead a peaceful life. The girl explained that this is thanks to the Protoss guards who guard this city. The city itself is surrounded by a huge abyss, and you can only get into it through 12 entrances guarded by guards. All guards are elite fighters who have passed multi-level selection. According to strength, they are divided into levels from strong to weak, a total of 5 levels S, A, B, C, D. The guy was tired of this story because he was still madly hungry. Suddenly a rude voice called the girl, telling her that she had again violated the ban on leaving the city. It was a C-rank Protoss guard named Ethan. He was indignant that Jenna did not ask him for permission to leave. The girl timidly answered him that he had misunderstood everything and she was just looking for Mr. Kell. Residents behind the girl began to whisper among themselves that she was still looking for the master, calling her stupid. The guard just grinned at what he heard. He said that her master died 3 years ago, and his corpse has not been found for a long time. The whole crowd laughed after the leader, causing only embarrassment to the beautiful girl. She was angry at what she heard because she was already tired of enduring these bullying. She remembered that very day, how she ran to that same battlefield in the pouring rain to help her master. But it was already too late, because her Lord Kell died in battle. But then a guy called out to the guard. It was our hero, who advised Ethan to keep an eye on the gate. He boldly moved towards the crowd wanting to protect the defenseless girl. Coming closer, Ben shamed the guard with a grin, saying that it was not nice for a crowd to offend such a nice girl. From such impudence of some stranger, Ethan jumped out of his chair in rage, and our hero at that moment calmly began to stretch his muscles. The crowd began to whisper again, not understanding why some stranger dared to go against the main guard at these gates. The guard sharply raised his fist, saying that the Protos is not happy with strangers, but to his surprise he missed, although the blow was quite strong and fast, because our hero turned out to be faster than him. Ben just grinned in the face of the offender, and his legs sparkled from the rapid breaking. The hero realized that his body had become so light due to his effect of absorbing energy from enemies. Immediately all the guard's minions rushed into battle to teach the impudent guy a lesson, but to their surprise they all fell to the ground and could not move. It was Jenna. She decided to help Ben using the UR rank ability. She loudly told the guys that no one would touch Ben while she was here. Ethan was amused by this because it was the force pull ability, which creates earth gravity in a radius, and it was too weak for his strength. He abruptly lifted himself off the ground, saying that he felt nothing and headed towards the hero. At that very second he was already above Ben and thought that this battle had already been won. But Ben was able to hold back Ethan's blow with his palm. From the power of the blow, the ground under their feet began to crack, but the main character didn't even move. The guard did not understand what happened because the arrogant guy was supposed to lose after this blow, and then he began to understand what was happening, because his strength began to leave his body. Ben chuckled because he understood how his absorption abilities worked. The guard was horrified and began to beg to stop, but Ben decided to teach the bully a lesson. Jenna was afraid for her owner, because she did not fully understand what had happened, and began to call him. The entire crowd, including the attackers who watched this fight, was shocked that some stranger was able to stop the guard of this gate. At that moment, a red aura shone around the two guys and suddenly a bang was heard. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Protos in one of the mansions, a tall man in a red velvet robe was enjoying wine on the balcony when suddenly a girl called out to him. It was an A-rank Protos guard. She asked if he felt what she felt. Count Dracula, S-rank guardian, looked at her with tired eyes and said that he felt this power, the power of Kel. Ethan fell to the ground exhausted and whispered in fear that it was endless darkness, that same legendary force. The guard was exhausted and looked like a living corpse. In surprise, he asked the stranger who he was. Ben looked at the losing guard and said that he was his daddy. The hero called Jenna, who was happy about her master's victory, and asked if they could eat now because he was dying of hunger. They quickly walked through the surprised crowd, talking about how Ben's eating power was enormous, to which the girl replied that he could eat as much as he wanted. The shocked residents only whispered about who this guy was, how he defeated the guards so easily and was using such powerful abilities. But then two girls stood in the way of our heroes, who were dressed just as beautifully as Jenna. The girl was surprised to see them, because she knew who these girls were and did not expect to see them here. The first girl was dressed in a kimono, and holding a long katana in her hand. She asked if Jenna had any problems. Her name was Leia. The second girl looked more like a scientist with short green hair. Her name was Sarah. Ben was surprised that Jenna has warrior friends. The girl suddenly pressed herself close to the guy and said that there was no need to worry because her owner had already helped her. To which the guy became embarrassed, and told the girl not to do that because he remembers what happened the last time she sat on him. Leia was surprised that Jenna called an unfamiliar guy master, because the last time she only called her master that way. To which the girl confidently said that there could be no mistake, because this guy was chosen by Kel and he is the heir to the throne. The girls were shocked by what they heard because they, like Jenna, were also Kel's protectors, and this means that now Ben is their new owner. The hero was in a stupor, because now two more girls will follow him in this world. After a long day, the newly minted team headed to Kel's residence. The girls finally fed Ben, and the bowls of noodles went away one after another. Leah and Sarah were amazed at the guy's appetite. They had not seen anyone so hungry for a long time. Jenna watched Ben's meal with admiration. She still remembered how he stood up for her today. The hero put the last plate on the table and notified everyone that he was full. Ben's new defenders wondered how many years he had not eaten that he could eat so many plates of food, and Jenna asked if the guy liked her dishes. Suddenly Leia abruptly stood up from the table. All this time she was thinking about the guy's abilities and wanted to talk to him about it. She didn't understand how the hero inherited the ability of endless darkness, and who he was. The girl told Ben that if he really is Kel's hope, then there will be no mercy for him, and his life and training will be harsh. Sarah supported her friend and said that being the master of these girls is not as easy as it seems at first glance. After all, the guy will have to fulfill the last wish of Mr. Kell, namely to become the king of the Protos and destroy all the corpses. Ben was outraged by another reminder that he should become king, because he did not want this. After dinner, the hero went to his room, thinking about what the girls had in mind today and what kind of destiny awaits him. In his room, he began training, because he had not felt what it was like to train for a long time due to his illness. After doing 100 push-ups, Ben thought about how everyone in this town was telling him that he should be the king of the Protos. After all, why should it concern him? Suddenly he heard a familiar male voice behind him, who calmly told him that this concerned him directly. The guy turned to the stranger, because he was sure that he was alone in this room. The picture he saw amazed him. He did not expect to see this man here. The stranger had long white hair and a robe in golden tones similar to how nobles dress. It was the Protos King Kell, the same person everyone mentions when they see Ben. The king told the guy that he was not so stupid if he could recognize him. The hero was shocked by what he saw, because Kell died long ago and should not be here. The stately man, grinning, answered the guy that this is true and his physical body has long been dead. But at the same time, his soul is alive and right now it is in Ben's body. The hero realized that in this case, now it is not a physical body sitting in front of him, but only the ghost of that very king. Kell said that this is so, because now he is completely powerless and can only be in the form of a ghost, and only a hero can see the king, because he is directly connected with him. Ben was indignant at what was said because the man brazenly pulled him out of another world, and also placed his soul into the guy's body without asking. The hero approached the king and was filled with anger. He assumed that the ghost wanted to use his body for his own purposes. Kell's calmness was amazing. Because he didn't even move, he calmed the guy down by answering that he wasn't interested. Immediately the king suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Ben, saying that he did not call him to the Protos for this. The guy saw that the man was calmly sitting on his bed, and just as calmly he said that he had called him only to make one deal. The king explained that he gave the guy the strongest ability in this world, namely endless darkness. He also allowed the hero to have the endless riches that Kell had, allowed him to have the highest status in this world, also that Ben could become the king of the Protos. And after he becomes one, he will need to find those who staged a palace coup 3 years ago and killed Kell. After listening to the king's touching story for a long time, the hero replied that he didn't care and wouldn't do it. The man did not expect such an answer, but he reminded the guy that he was in such a position that he could not refuse. Ben decided to have a snack and took a banana from the table, suggesting that since the king called him into this world, it means he definitely has a method to subjugate the guy's will to himself. While he was peeling a banana, he asked Kell to tell him what trump card he had to subdue the hero. The king jumped out of bed and grinned and replied that the guy was smarter than he thought. After all, the man put a seal in the hero's body that can be gotten rid of only after fulfilling his condition. Ben was not happy with what was said, and he asked what kind of seal was installed in his body. Kell explained that this seal is quite cunning, and whenever the hero becomes attracted to a woman, he will feel unbearable pain. It is better to die than to live like this, and if the hero refuses, then his life will be like an unsuitable man. These words struck the guy to the core. His body seemed to be pierced with 1,000 needles. He really didn't expect the Protos king to blackmail a pawn like that. Ben asked why Kell chose him because he is an ordinary guy, and the king could have chosen a more suitable candidate for revenge. He also suggested that apparently the man could only choose him and not anyone else. Kell was amazed at how the hero guesses everything, because due to an incurable disease, the hero's muscles completely atrophied, and he was like a blank sheet of paper. The guy was best suited for the endless darkness. Ben continued his conversation. He said that he was very grateful that the man gave him a second life. But he is a living person, and not someone's toy for revenge. After listening to the guy, Kell, with a grin on his face, said that at first he greatly underestimated the hero. Meanwhile, someone's silhouette was sitting on the roof of the house directly above Ben's room. It was Leia, who was surprised that the main character was talking to himself in the room. After talking with the ghost, Ben went to bed. He assumed that it was not a fact that the seal really existed, because then he would wake up every morning in pain. Suddenly the door to his room opened and an unfamiliar girl appeared on the threshold, dressed in fishnet tights. She was wearing a rather revealing outfit consisting of a bright jacket, unbuttoned wide open, and a daring collar around her neck. Also part of her outfit was a large minigun which she pointed at Ben's face. Feeling something was wrong, the guy opened his eyes slightly to see what was happening. The picture that he saw shocked him. In front of him stood an angry girl who was ready to kill our hero at that very moment. Ben understood what a sad situation he was in, so he decided to try to talk before it was too late. He asked what the girl wanted to do with him right now. An unknown beauty with pink hair asked him if he had the power of endless darkness. The hero did not understand what to do. He asked the girl to calm down and remove this huge gun, but she was against it, ordering him to shut up. It was Kel's sister, Lucy, who was nicknamed the Little Demon. She said that she was not as naive as Jenny and that the main character used some kind of sneaky trick to take over her brother's power. The guy was struck by the girl's words, and he assumed that since she was the king's sister, she should be his personal guard, like other girls he had met before. Suddenly shots rang out, and the hero tried to dodge them, although it was useless in such a situation. The pillow Ben was lying on now looked like a sieve. From the adrenaline in his body, the guy started screaming at the girl because she could have just killed him. But the girl didn't slow down. She demanded to tell her how he got her brother's power. Otherwise Ben would end up just like this pillow. The guy briefly told the whole story of how he arrived in this world and how he received that legendary power. What Lucy heard made her cry, because she thought her brother was dead, and now she finds out that his soul is still alive in the body of this guy. Ben hissed like a snake and told the girl to be quiet, because if anyone found out that Kel's soul was in his body, the king's enemies would kill the guy. Out of overwhelming emotions, Lucy rushed into the arms of the hero, calling him her new brother. But her sudden outburst of love was stopped by the guy's hand, which confused the girl. But the girl didn't stop and tried to hug Ben, to which the guy told her that he was not her brother and there was no need to cuddle up to him. If Lucy really wants to help the hero, then tomorrow she must take him to one place. Surprised by Ben's answer, Lucy asked what this place was. The next day, the girl sat outside the establishment, which was emitting pink neon light, and told all visitors not to enter if they still wanted to live. It was clear on her face that she was very embarrassed to be here. She promised herself that if the hero dared to order such a thing again, she would turn him into a sieve. There were very beautiful girls inside the establishment who asked the guy if it was his first time coming here. One of the girls, slowly eating fruit, suggested Ben to relax and give free rein to his desires. The hero was surrounded by a crowd of beautiful girls who wanted the guy to pay attention to them, but judging by the expression on his face, he was very reserved. He restrained himself, because he assumed that if he did not succumb to the attraction of girls, then Kel's seal would disappear. He prayed to survive this test, but the girls around him did not slow down. The guy just kept repeating in his head that he had to be persistent and not give in to his emotions. Meanwhile, the girl's passion only intensified. It seems that even the most persistent guy could not resist. And Ben gave in, shouting that he couldn't stand it. A heartbreaking scream was heard from the establishment, filled with pain and despair. The door swung open and Lucy saw Ben quickly leaving. She grinned and sarcastically told the hero that he was a dirty pervert for losing heart in front of the girls. There was only despair on the guy's face. He cursed Kel for putting such a painful mark on him. On the way home, Lucy asked if Ben would take part in the new selection of Protos guards, to which the guy replied that he did not know what was needed for preparation, and he did not want to look after the gates. The girl explained that in order to become a guard you need to fulfill one condition, and at that moment Ben turned to her. She thought that he was interested in this, but in fact the guy said that he wanted to go to the toilet because he drank a lot of water. The hero went into the nearest alley, because he would not have had time to get home, and then a strange ball similar to a baseball fell in front of him, which at the same time had a mouth with teeth. Ben picked it up, and thought it was some kind of strange toy that looked very unusual. Suddenly, the same ball fell next to him, but of a gigantic size, which scattered all the trash cans in the area. The hero was stunned by such a sight. He did not understand what was happening here. It was a demon devourer, a demonic level predator, who at that moment was about to attack the guy. At the same time, Lucy, who was waiting for Ben, began to speculate on what happened to her brother, and that he decided to make this weakling his heir. Suddenly, from the alley where the guy went, loud screams and noise were heard that were hard not to hear. Lucy decided to see what this boy was doing there that was making so much noise, but what she saw there shocked her. Ben jumped out from around the corner, being chased by a huge demon and trying to eat him. The guy barely dodged him, but so far was still unharmed. The girl was amazed that a predator of a demonic level got inside the city so easily. The hero landed on the ground, and from behind the predator, small balls of demons flew towards him. He understood that he would not have time to evade them, and apparently this was the end. But suddenly all the balls that were flying in his direction were pierced by bullets, leaving only traces of their own blood on the guy. Ben turned around and looked in the direction where his little friends had flown to see who saved him. Lucy grinned, throwing her minigun over her shoulder, and asked if this pervert had wet his pants. Realizing what was happening, the guy shouted that she herself was a pervert, like her whole family. But the girl did not pay his attention because she noticed a figure standing on the roof of the house and ordered her to come down because she had noticed it a long time ago. She understood who it was, because only one person can control demonic-level predators and also bring them to the city. No one is more capable of this than her brother Kel's wife, Eliza. Ben was surprised by what was said. He asked Lucy if this girl was the king's wife. The little demon explained that this girl had a Protos marriage contract on her body, and at the age of 20 she was supposed to become the king's wife. At first, Lucy thought that she would become her little sister, but now it seems that this girl is just a cheap litter. Suddenly the figure on the roof began to move and rushed down towards our heroes. She landed on the demon's back with lightning speed and advised Lucy not to joke like that, because she could not marry such a loser as Kel. At this moment, Ben became very embarrassed because of the beauty he saw that had just appeared in front of him, and his heart, it seems, should jump out of his chest right now from such fast beats. The stranger straightened her charming black hair, and said that she just needs to kill this guy and then the marriage contract will be lost. At that moment, a girl flashed through his head, who was very similar to the king's wife. She told Ben to stay away from her because he was not her type. She turned around and left that day when the guy tried to confess his love to her. Ben couldn't move because he saw such a beautiful girl who was part of his memories. He timidly asked the girl who stood in front of them on a huge monster if she was his goddess. Lucy looked at the hero in surprise and thought that apparently this guy had moved his head after all. Ben still looked at the girl with loving eyes. He extended his hand to her and asked her why she came into this world. Was it really for him? At the same moment, the hero receives a strong blow to the face from Eliza, who was perplexed by the fact that he calls her a goddess. The guy made several turns before slamming into the wall, because the girl's blow was quite powerful. Lucy was furious that some girl hit her brother. She began to shout at her not to be arrogant, that she was a bride and could think that she was allowed whatever she wanted. To which Eliza replied that she could not marry someone who seeks entertainment in brothels. This did not calm Lucy. She shouted that the guy's life was her brother's last wish, and if Eliza wanted to kill him, she would have to deal with her. Suddenly, a huge mouth of a monster appeared in front of the little demon, which everyone had forgotten about. The girl would not have had time to react to how quickly he got to her. She only managed to notice him right in front of her, and it seemed she understood how it would end. The demon instantly swallowed her, biting her minigun in half. Eliza told her that she would kill the guy before Lucy was digested in the demon's stomach. The girl was sure that after such a blow the guy must have suffered greatly, and she hurried towards him to finish him off. Suddenly, from the smoke raised from Ben's landing, a hand reached out to the king's wife. She almost grabbed her by the hair, but the girl managed to quickly dodge by jumping back. Eliza couldn't believe that after such a blow the guy still had the strength to answer her. A voice was heard from the thick smoke. It was Ben, who regretted that he could not catch her, although he was quite close to it. The girl quickly realized that he used endless darkness to repel the attack, but she was surprised that in just 2 days the guy was able to fully master this technique. The hero was surrounded by an aura of different colors and it seems there was not a scratch on him. He told the offender that she could not be his goddess, because she had not visited him for all 3 years, and therefore could not come for him into this world. Because of the blow, Ben came to his senses and realized that Eliza and the girl from the past were simply very similar, and only. The girl answered him that since he already has a loved one, then even more so she will not marry him, so today he must die. The guy just grinned when he heard these words, because he hasn't loved her for a long time. Especially if he becomes the king of the Protos, then many girls will want to be with him, including Eliza. She shouldn't hold on to him, and she shouldn't be jealous of him just because he went to a hotel. Finally, Ben asked the girl if she liked him. Eliza fell into a rage at these words. She couldn't believe that the guy was saying such nonsense. She only came here because she has a marriage contract on her body that she wants to break. Suddenly the asphalt began to crumble under Ben. He realized that Eliza had used one of her abilities. Hundreds of demons flew out of the ground, who instantly lifted him into the air and beat him from all sides. Flying up, they turned around and fell down in order to inflict maximum damage on the guy. From the force of the blow there was a loud explosion, and the ground around shook. Eliza was sure that this time she managed to catch him. She said after the hero that it was all over, because her demons would not leave even a bone of him. The girl didn't want to kill him at all. The guy was just unlucky to get to this place and be her target. Suddenly the smoke cleared, and our hero calmly exhaled. A multicolored aura was still visible around him, which protected him. He was sitting at the bottom of the crater that was formed after the impact. Ben agreed that he was unlucky with the place he ended up in. Eliza was horrified. She couldn't believe that this time the legendary power protected the guy. She was also horrified by the fact that her demons now looked like withered corpses. While the girl was trying to understand what happened, the hero was already heading towards her with the words that in fact he was not going to become the king of the Protos. Everyone insists that he go down a certain path, but no one asks him what he really wants. He had already died once, and it was this life that Ben decided to live for himself. The hero's words surprised Eliza, but at that moment some noise was heard next to her. Inside the demon that swallowed Lucy, a girl's voice was heard. He asked Eliza if she knew why the little demon uses a machine gun. All because the girl's power is too great, and if she is not controlled, then no one knows what can happen to the innocent. The two fighters were shocked by what they saw. Eliza thought that the compression force of this demon was 2 tons, and she could not open its mouth. Appearing, Lucy shouted that it was a rank or power. Changing her cells, her power becomes limitless. The girl flew out of the monster's mouth as if from a cannon and headed towards Eliza. If she hits with her blow, it will be fatal. The ground under the feet of the king's wife split into small pieces from the force of Lucy's blow, but Eliza still managed to dodge it. She quickly climbed to the roof of the building, realizing that she had greatly underestimated these two. Ben was amazed at how hot-tempered Lucy could be, although after what she did with the pillow it wasn't surprising. Eliza knew that she wouldn't be able to defeat them at close range, so she decided to use one of her abilities since the two were standing so close to each other. Her eyes became like 2 blue moons, and her face became as tense as possible. Our heroes thought that this girl was running too fast, and they needed to come up with something to catch up with her. A huge blue ball appeared behind Eliza's back, which illuminated the entire surrounding area. This was the Blue Moon ability. Ben and Lucy realized that they could no longer move, and their minds seemed to no longer belong to them. Blue Moon rank SSR strength. Just by looking into Elisa's eyes can control weak predators. But if you use the light of the moon, then her power increases significantly, and she can control people for a short time. Suddenly, behind me, I heard the sound of a blade being taken out of its sheath. Someone was quickly approaching. Eliza only managed to see the shine of the blade in front of her. She understood that she would not have time to dodge. The heroes again felt themselves in their bodies. They could not understand what happened to them. It was Leia. With her sweeping blow she hit the girl and interrupted the use of the ability. Eliza was only able to spit out the blood that formed after the blow. It seems that the battle ended at that moment. Leia calmly told the girl that if she wants to kill Ben, then she should first ask her permission. Due to the strong blow, Eliza lost consciousness and fell from the roof of the house. Ben was not taken aback and at the same moment hurried towards the fallen girl. He caught her in flight, preventing her from dying from falling from the roof. The guy started screaming at Eliza to wake up. He didn't want her to die here. But the girl's mind has already become clouded, and it seems she has stopped hearing what the hero was trying to tell her. A little later, our heroes went home, namely to the house of Mr. Kell. Eliza suddenly woke up. She didn't understand what was happening because she thought she died on the roof then. The girl looked around, trying to figure out where she was. There was no wound on her ample chest. Eliza was sure that Leia had pierced her with a sword, but there was not a scratch on her body. The girl tried to remember what happened at that moment, and why the battle was lost. Before her eyes there was a picture of Leia drawing her katana with lightning speed, and it seems Eliza saw a demon behind the girl's back. The king's ex-wife got out of bed to inspect the place. She thought that if Ben's protector was nearby, she would not be able to reach him. Suddenly, approaching the terrace, she saw the same guy who was sitting peacefully and talking with someone. Ben was talking to Leia, asking her how she managed to find them. The defender reminded that it was her duty to provide protection to the heir, and she must always know where the guy is, because not only Eliza is hunting for his head. Kel's killers are looking for Ben right now and his every move is under threat, and don't forget about the other two heirs. They are Count Dracula, who has great influence in the Protos, and Kel's older sister, the Archangel Mary. These two are also not happy about the appearance of the hero. Right now Ben is making him look like a weakling so anyone could try to kill him, and it was stupid to let Eliza live. Ben chuckled and replied that he couldn't just watch such a beautiful girl die. Eliza remembered how the guy heroically caught her in the air and helped the girl. She couldn't even think that he was capable of such a thing. The blue moon ability had no effect on Leia. She could have easily killed Eliza, but the guy saved her. This touched the girl. Ben still continued his dialogue, saying that he doesn't need a wife for nothing, although he is not going to be the king of the Protos. That's why he didn't let her die then. Suddenly the door swung open sharply and Eliza came out onto the terrace, who, it seems, was not happy with the guy's words. Ben realized that she heard everything and decided to play dumb, and say that he didn't say anything. Eliza was angry, but at the same time embarrassed. She shouted to the guy that she would not become his wife just because he saved her. Ben, out of shame, didn't know where to go, and the girl firmly declared that she would never marry the guy. The hero was shocked by the girl's straightforwardness, once again receiving such a cruel refusal. It seems that the two forgot that there was a third person on the terrace. Leia loudly called the girl's name. The defender was already preparing for battle, drawing a long and sharp katana from her sheath. She warned Eliza that if she wanted to kill Ben, then this time Leia would not use the hilt of the sword. Now the girl understood why there was no wound on her chest. Last time she was hit not with a blade but with a handle and only lost consciousness from the force of the blow. Eliza was even more horrified by Leia's strength, and understood that if the defender was next to the guy, then the girl would not be able to defeat him. Suddenly the girl flew into the air with lightning speed. Her speed was still as high as during the battle. She loudly shouted the name of some creature, which surprised everyone who was on the terrace at that moment. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a huge bird appeared in the sky, heading towards the house. She instantly appeared above the heroes, and her size was so huge that the shadow of her wings covered the roof of the estate. Ben was afraid that Eliza could summon such creatures. This bird was completely different from the demon that she summoned. While flying, the girl did a deft somersault and landed on the creature's head. She deftly maintained her balance, and now it seemed that she had an advantage over the heroes. It was a huge mythical black bird. A blue glow streamed from its eyes, and the air around it shook due to the span of its huge wings. Leia was not afraid of the picture she saw. She knew that, judging by the ancient scriptures, this was a high-level beast. This fight became more and more interesting for her. Having prepared her katana, she decided to cut this beast together with the girl. But at that moment Eliza turned to the guy asking if he wanted to marry her. If his answer is yes, then she is ready to discuss the engagement with him, but only in private without strangers. The guy realized that the girl wanted Leia to leave and he was a little scared, but he decided to give the girl a chance and talk to her. But the defender firmly replied that she would not leave. Ben confidently told Leia to calm down, because if the girl wants to kill him, then she is unlikely to succeed, since she just barely jumped on her animal. The defender looked gloomily at the guy and replied that if he wants to die, then so be it. She sheathed her katana and prepared to leave, and the guy still reassured her, saying that he could stand up for himself. After some time they were left alone. It was a beautiful night, and somewhere nearby they could hear the chirping of cicadas. Ben understood that Eliza was afraid of Leia, so she asked to be left alone. He asked the girl what she really needed. Eliza abruptly interrupted him, saying that she admitted that the guy was not as bad as she thought. But this does not change anything, because the hero relies only on endless darkness and for higher people he is just a pawn. Ben replied to the girl that her speech was very offensive, and this was not what he expected to hear. The girl continued her dialogue by saying that in a month the Protos will host the annual selection of guards before the delegation, and if the hero defeats her and becomes the guardian of the Protos, then she will help him ascend the throne. Ben remembered that he had already been told about this selection of guards, but he still did not understand what it was. It was a competition where heroes fight predators and often die at their hands. The qualifying round takes place in 2 stages in order to identify outstanding newcomers who will take the place of the fallen guards. So the Protos provides itself with guards of 72 people. This allows the Protos to provide protection and preserve the human race. The guy heard what he needed, namely, that if he wins, then their marriage contract with Eliza will come into force. Eliza sighed and said that it was not enough to become a Protos guard. One of the conditions was to ascend to the throne, and only then could she marry him. She can only marry a top-ranking guard, a hero who the entire Protos relies on. Eliza was confused remembering Kel, saying that he was a very handsome and strong man and could Ben be the same. The guy trembled from what he heard, and quietly said that Eliza really loved him. The girl abruptly interrupted him with screams. She did not want Ben to say these words out loud. The hero was very indignant, not understanding how the girl fell in love with such a gray-haired deceiver. He has a face like a weakling. Eliza decided to abruptly change the topic, saying that the guy must remember that if he does not pass the first round, then the competition will end for him, and this means defeat. And defeat for Ben will mean that he will never be able to ascend the throne and marry Eliza. After the story, the girl was sure that the hero would refuse, but the guy was not going to give up. He said that he would willingly join her in these competitions. The days flew by, and the hero trained, and now a month has passed since their conversation. An unknown guy slowly moved towards a crowd of people who were standing near a large building reminiscent of the Colosseum. It was a young fighter with a naked torso and red hair. On his hands hung bracelets around which a purple glow emanated. When he saw the venue for the competition, he was delighted. This place is perfect for the birth of guardians. At the entrance to the selection arena, the guy saw a huge number of applicants who were heading inside. This turned the fighter on more, because all these people looked very strong, and he would finally be able to test his strength. The blood of hell in his body was boiling. The guy's name was Adam, and he was from a small village that was not far from the Protos. Having walked along the corridor, Adam entered the arena, which caused him even more delight. The Colosseum was truly huge. A mountain towered above it, over which dragons flew. Adam considered this place worthy of his fist. His admiration was interrupted by some guy who landed right at the feet of the fighter. He was thrown back by a handsome guy with glasses who had ashen hair, and his suit was decorated with 2 snowflakes. The handsome stranger told the fallen fighter to take his hands off his suit, to which the guy shouted that he unintentionally hit him. The newcomers watching this were delighted by the spectacle, because the selection had not yet begun, but something interesting was already happening. The fighter, who a couple of minutes ago was lying on the ground, flew sharply towards the offender, saying that he was stronger than him, and was not afraid to fight him. Ash-Hair didn't like the peasant's reaction. His fingers were covered with ice, and it seemed he already understood that the battle had been won. In the blink of an eye, the fighter who rushed so furiously was encased in a large block of ice and could no longer move. He could still think and regretted touching the man, but it was too late. The crowd was shocked by what they saw. They wanted to know who he was and where he came from. One of those who came recognized this ability. It was an elemental level ability of SSR rank, and if he is not mistaken, then only one person can have such abilities and love for purity. Archangel S rank Daniel, who was the son of a noble family nicknamed the Icy Soul Eater. All the girls in the crowd immediately noticed the handsome man and began to confess their love to him. But then someone touched his shoulder again. For the second time that day someone touched him. It was Adam, who noticed that Daniel was a very strong fighter. Everyone was shocked. Did this hillbilly really want to be encased in ice like the last guy? But one of the crowd recognized the peasant. He said that Adam had killed dozens of ghost-level predators last year, and he was a real fighting man. At that moment, the bracelet on the guy's hand began to rotate, and his hand burst into flames. He told Daniel that he also had an SSR rank elemental ability, and wanted him to fight him. The ash-haired man slowly turned to the guy and calmly ordered him to remove his hand. Meanwhile, the girl who was watching this whole performance, who was slowly exhaling smoke from her pipe, decided to intervene. She shouted that apparently all the fighters were full of energy and couldn't wait to fight. But it was too early to start the game because the selection had not yet begun. It was the school judge who guarded the place, a beautiful girl with a magnificent open bust dressed in furs. Adam realized that it was better not to start ahead of time, and said that he just decided to say hello to a friend. Daniel no longer thought about the impudent man, he was only worried about whether today the same guy who inherited endless darkness would have to. The crowd lost their spirit when they saw 2 SSR rank abilities of the newcomers. They understood that they could not cope with this. Night fell and it was time to announce the start of the qualifiers. The director said it was time to start. She was looking forward to the start of the competition. Daniel quietly asked to wait a little longer. It seems he was waiting for someone. Suddenly a hand rose from the crowd and someone in a sweet voice shouted to the director not to start the competition. It was Eliza. She said that there was another player who did not have time to appear in the arena. The man recognized the girl. He assumed that she also came to look at the guy with the legendary ability, and perhaps because of her marriage contract. The director understood who she was talking about, because within a month, rumors about a hero with a legendary ability had spread throughout the city. She agreed that she would wait for such a valuable player. But only 5 minutes. 5 minutes passed, and the crowd started a hubbub. They were talking about how the hero was scared of the competition and that he definitely wouldn't come. The director agreed that the time had already run out, and it was time to start the competition. Daniel's face showed disappointment. He couldn't believe that a hero with such abilities wouldn't really come. Eliza was also upset. She didn't want to believe that Ben had deceived her. Suddenly, steps were heard in the distance from the crowd, slowly heading towards the center of the arena. The girl immediately became prettier when she saw the familiar figure. After all, he kept his promise. It was Ben. Surrounded by his girls and guards, he was dressed like a true king in a black robe covered with fur. He said with confidence that all these guys didn't look very friendly. The whole crowd was furious that he had appeared in the arena. Some were furious that everyone was waiting for the guy. Some were afraid of his strength. And only Adam thought that it must be hot in such furs. This was not the reaction Ben expected. He promised the crowd that he would deal with anyone who stood in his way. Eliza seemed to like how the hero had changed over this month. He looked like such a confident man. The roar of the crowd was stopped by a loud kick. It was the director who told everyone to shut up. Now that everyone is assembled, she decided to declare the Guardian Selection Conference open. Swinging her pipe, she quickly hit something in the air. In this place everything sparkled, and it seemed that space began to tear apart. A huge portal formed at the site of the impact, announcing that the competition had begun. The crowd was shocked, because before there were no space portals at the qualifiers. They did not understand what it was needed for. The director stated that the selection is divided into 2 rounds. In the first, newcomers should go through the portal, which will send them out of town. All they need to do is stay in the designated area, and in these places the fighters must live for 5 days. Only those who survived have the right to participate in the second round of selection. The crowd began to panic, because it was impossible to live for 5 days outside the city and it was unknown where this portal would send it. Perhaps straight to the lair of the monsters. The director stated that the duty of the guards is to protect the city, and if newcomers are afraid, they can refrain from participating and try next year. Hands immediately reached out from the crowd. Many did not want to take part in this and decided to try next time. Some time passed before there were anyone interested in the arena. Many left this place without trying. Now that only the brave remained, the director asked who would decide to go first. Ben, without thinking twice, said that he would go first. Apparently he had some kind of plan. Eliza and Daniel were surprised by what was said. The girl understood that the guy was up to something. Ben really had a plan. He decided that if he went first, he would have time to explore the area. This would give him an advantage over others and he should not miss it. Suddenly someone grabbed his black robe, wanting to attract attention. It was Jenna. She was worried about the guy and told him that she had a bad feeling and he shouldn't go first. Ben hastened to calm the girl down and told her that he would meet with them after the first stage. After these words, the hero quickly walked towards the mystical portal. Without hesitation, he entered the portal, which it is not known where it will take him. Coming out of the portal, in his eyes there was only horror from what he saw. In front of him was a huge 3-eyed monster that resembled an octopus. At that moment Ben realized that he was not very lucky after all. It was a ghostly predator who flew into a rage because some person had invaded his lair. His size was so huge that it seemed he could break through a building with one tentacle. The monster directed one of these tentacles at the hero in order to punish the insolent person in one blow. Ben did not have time to dodge. The ground under him scattered in different directions from the blow, and it seemed that no one could survive from such damage. But the guy was protected by endless darkness. He easily raised his tentacle and said that he was incredibly lucky that he teleported immediately to such an enemy. It's a pity he doesn't have time for this battle, because he had an appointment. In rage, the predator sent 3 more of its tentacles towards the guy to finish what he started. But Ben deftly dodged the blow, even though the attack was quite fast. He landed on one of the tentacles to quickly reach the enemy's weak spot. While Ben was running along the tentacle, the monster thought that the hero had pretty good abilities for an ordinary person. But the guy had already approached the enemy's weak point. He understood that he needed to finish off the predator quickly, otherwise other fighters could discover his location. Meanwhile, everything in the arena was peaceful and calm, and no one knew what was happening on the other side of the portal. The little demon was worried that Ben might not be able to cope because the rules had been changed, and now no one could guarantee that nothing would happen to him. But Leia decided to cheer up the girl by saying that the guy is not as simple as he seems. From the first day he entered the Star Spirit Garden, he was extremely disciplined. He went to bed at 10 p.m. and got up at 7 a.m. keeping a perfect schedule. Every day the hero did 100 push-ups, squats, pumped up his abs, and there wasn't a single day when he missed a workout. And at the end of a long run of 10 kilometers, he never stopped despite the wind and rain. There is always energy in his body, and if he cannot move, he will die because of it. That is why he is like Leia. He has a fighting instinct, and she understands that such people will not die so easily. The predator's eyes popped out from Ben's crushing blow. There is no way to defend against such a blow. Violet sparks began to pierce the monster's entire body, causing colossal damage. Suddenly, purple energy began to be released from the monster, which the guy had already seen before when he fought against corpses. He immediately realized that this was the energy that was left from the squid, and now he would absorb it. Suddenly the corpse's hand came out of the tentacle, which seemed impossible because the predator was defeated. Following the hand, a zombie appeared, which gradually crawled out. When it came halfway out of his mouth and eyes, green smoke began to come out, which gradually scattered. This fog began to spread throughout the area. The hero was sure that he had defeated the squid, but now he did not understand what was happening. And then he thought that, probably, the predator was making a signal and attracting other monsters to itself. Suddenly everything around began to sparkle, and the air became cold as if winter had come. The predator's body was instantly covered in ice from start to finish. Now in front of Ben there was only a block of ice that looked like a large mountain. From what he saw, the guy froze in place and did not understand what had just happened. An unfamiliar figure spoke behind him, and the hero turned to see who was there. The figure said that the predator asked for help from his kind. It was Daniel. He explained that it was originally a humanoid predator, but when people eat too much they become like this. Ben was indignant that the stranger not only spied on him, but also stole his trophy. Adjusting his glasses, the nobleman replied that if he had not helped the guy, he would now be surrounded by predators and the hero should be grateful to him. The guy didn't listen to Daniel and turned around and said that he didn't have time to fight him, because he needed to find the person with whom he had an appointment. Suddenly the air became cold again, and snowflakes appeared around the hero. The guy had already seen this attack a couple of minutes ago. Ben asked the stranger what he was going to do, covering himself with his aura of endless darkness. Daniel told the guy that the rules are that everyone needs to live here for 5 days, which means that the rules allow participants to eliminate competitors. Ben turned to him, answering that it seemed that by the word competitor he meant him. Meanwhile, in the forest, one of the participants was running away from a crowd of predators. Something on his hand made a sound similar to an alert on a watch as he approached an unknown blue wall. Suddenly there was a loud explosion that tore the guy into pieces. The competition was over for him. A cooling corpse of a zombie could be seen in the ground, which had been defeated by someone. It was Jenna who dealt with the predators that attacked her. She thought about where her master teleported, because she had to find him. Suddenly the watch on her hand began to make a piercing sound. This was a locator that is given to the player upon entry, and if it makes a sound it means it has turned on a warning system for the player. After all, there was only one rule of the game in the competition: survive in your area for 5 days. Stepping out of bounds will likely result in you being eliminated from the competition. Jenna hurried to find the owner. She quickly moved along the branches like a cat. She also understood that she should not go beyond the boundaries of the field into which the portal sent her. Descending from the trees, she went on foot. All this was watched by a mysterious figure in a cloak. It was an unknown guest who was glad to have found her. Moving through the forest, Jenna suspected something was wrong. She had the feeling that she was being followed all this time. She suddenly began to brake in order to turn around and see who was hiding in the trees. Stopping, the girl shouted loudly for the stranger to get out. Looking into the darkness, she asked why the ghost continues to haunt her all this time. The guy was only glad that she finally noticed him. He had been longing for a fight for a long time. An unknown figure descended from the tree with lightning speed and landed right in front of the girl. The stranger said that she deserves to be Ben's bodyguard, and asked when the girl noticed him. Jenna replied that she noticed him at the very beginning and asked what this guy wanted from her. The stranger threw off his cloak to reveal his true appearance. It was an electric god. Laughing, he said that someone wants Ben to die in this forest, so Jenna must take him to the hero. But the girl was determined. She had to ensure the safety of her master at any cost. At that same second, the villain sank into the ground due to the strong gravity that pressed on him. Gravity field, one of the girl's abilities. Whenever she counted numbers, the force of gravity in the radius increased. The guy's legs were already knee-deep in the ground. In this position he would not have been able to use his abilities against the girl. But he was only amused by the defender's ability. When he began to sink into the ground, he realized that it was a matter of gravity. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, another battle seems to be brewing. Daniel told Ben that just because the guy wasn't threatening him now, he wouldn't fight him. The hero did not understand what was happening. He wanted to find out what this ash-haired man wanted. The nobleman assured the guy that there was no need to be nervous, because he came here to tell the guy one thing. Approaching Ben, he asked him to stay alive in this forest by any means. After that, Daniel headed forward into the thicket of the forest. The hero did not understand what he meant and asked why the stranger said that. The nobleman turned around and explained that someone just wants the guy to die and not pass the first round. To which Ben replied that many want him dead, but so far no one has managed to kill him. Daniel grinned, because the guy still didn't understand what the nobleman guessed as soon as he heard the rules of the competition. The purpose of the rules has changed because of Ben. We need to make it easier to kill him, and anyone who can change the selection rules is definitely a very influential person. As he left, he added that if a guy wants to be in the Garden of Star Spirits, he must definitely survive the first round. As Ben watched the stranger go, he wondered who it was and why he was helping him. But suddenly he felt a strange force that affected him. The hero had a feeling that he was not moving of his own free will, and he turned in the direction where he was being pulled. He was drawn into the thicket of the forest. Ben immediately realized that he needed to run there. The god of thunder struck the girl with lightning speed, which she did not expect because she slammed him into the ground. He swung and struck another blow at the girl, and flashes of lightning sparkled at the sight of the impact. From the power of her ability, Jenna flew through the trees, breaking each one in her path. The blow was of monstrous force. Having flown some distance, the girl crashed into the ground with a roar. She was covered in bruises and scratches, but still managed to survive the landing. Jenna did not know that the guy had the power of lightning. He used it to accelerate and overcome the gravity that the girl created. Swaying, she rose to her feet with difficulty. She understood that he was too dangerous and under no circumstances should he approach her owner. At that very second the guy found himself near the girl. She didn't even notice how he had traveled such a long distance in a second. His speed was truly amazing. From behind his back, he began to take out a knife, which was also filled with lightning, like its owner. Laughing, he said that if Jenna didn't lead him to Ben, he would find him himself, along with the girl's corpse on his shoulder. But the defender did not lose her confidence. She replied that the stranger would not dare to touch a hair on her master's head. At the same time, on the other side of the forest, someone was running forward at such a speed that you could only see the dust from his tracks. 3 guys noticed the runner and realized that this was the same guy everyone was talking about. They were teleported together, which means the 3 of them can cope against one warrior. But then one of the fighters was surprised that the runner did not stop, but ran at great speed straight towards them. Ben ran so fast that he didn't even notice the 3 newcomers and blew them away like pins in a bowling alley. He didn't stop because he had a feeling that Jenna was in danger. The girl was completely beaten and could barely stand on her feet. She had wounds all over her body. She only told herself that she was here to help her master and should not give up. The thunder god only mocked that such a beautiful girl should die because of such a short-lived master. He raised his blade above the girl's head to deal her the final blow, when suddenly he felt something tremble behind him, and moved towards him. A lightning-fast elbow strike hit the guy's neck. He couldn't even figure out what happened. The force of the blow caused the offender to fly forward with great speed. On his way there was a stone into which the god of thunder crashed with such force that the entire thicket shook at that moment. Jenna turned around in surprise because she had already prepared herself for the fact that she was going to die. Near the stone where the offender crashed stood her owner, who arrived just in time. Ben stood near the stone where his opponent crashed. The force of the blow was so great that a crater formed in the place where the god of thunder flew. The guy was hit in the neck, so he no longer showed signs of life. The hero was glad that he was on time, because if he had been late even for a minute, then Jenna would have come to an end. After some time, the heroes were sitting in a clearing. The guy apologized to the girl for the fact that because of him she went to these competitions. Jenna reassured the guy. She was sorry that she, as a guard, could not protect her master, and he himself had to protect her. She was also surprised how he could find her in such a large forest. Ben said that he felt that the girl was in danger, and even sensed where she was. The girl was amazed that her owner had such an ability. Although he did not have such an ability, these were just sensations. Meanwhile, in the place where the battle ended, strange things began to happen. The DNA in the body of the defeated warrior began to rearrange itself, and by some miracle he began to come to life. Dead a minute ago, the body began to move little by little, trying to come to its senses. A strong wind blew and Jenna coughed. Her wounds were very deep. The guy, without thinking twice, took off his robe and gave it to the girl so that she would not freeze under the tree. He told the defender to put it on and rest well after the fight, while he would look after her. The hero added that the girl took care of and looked after the guy for the last month. Now it's his turn to take care of her. These words touched her very much, and despite the severe wounds, a sweet smile shone on her face. It got dark outside. The girl fell asleep recovering from the battle, and the guy, as promised, sat and guarded her. Not far from their small camp, strange tentacles began to stir. They stuck into the ground in order to attack our heroes unnoticed. Emerging behind Ben, they headed straight towards him in order to kill him before he understood anything. But with a quick movement of his hand, the hero grabbed the tentacles and tore them apart, stopping the enemy's attack. He realized long ago that the god of thunder was pretending to be dead, because if he died, then Ben would begin to absorb his life energy. The guy explained that he would really be dead from such a blow to the neck, but he was injected with a drug that turns him into a predator, so it's not so easy to kill him. The striker also thought that the hero had absorbed the power of the gate guard, whom he fought earlier, and he had been training hard for the last month. Perhaps Ben could reach level B. Suddenly the god of thunder began to curl up and an ominous aura mixed with lightning discharges began to emanate around him. Heaps of other tentacles that were on his arms suddenly burst out from his back, and the color of his skin changed to gray like that of corpses. Ben did not expect to see such a spectacle. What was happening to this guy and who he began to turn into, he also did not understand. It was the highest form of the thunder god, the strong body of a predator and SSR rank lightning. He laughed hysterically, shouting that the hero was going to die, because the predator was at the top of Class B. But Ben didn't listen to the offender for long and immediately hit him in the face, ordering him to shut up. From the force of the blow, the god of thunder flew towards the forest, but Ben moved to where the guy was flying in order to finish him off. He slammed him into the ground with all his might, holding his face with his hand. Due to the speed of the impact, the ground under the guy broke, forming another crater. This time, energy began to be released from him, which the hero was ready to absorb in order to gain the ability of a fighter. Enraged, he stood over the enemy saying that if the thunder god is the best in Class B, then the hero is the top of Class B. But the enemy did not listen to the guy. He only thought that the most terrible ability in the endless darkness is that it sucks energy and abilities from the opponent. He did not understand how Ben was able to master such power in just a month. Life flashed before his eyes. He remembered a man in protective overalls who warned that the drug was experimental, and did the guy really want to inject himself with it? The future god of thunder was chained to the wall. His heartbeat was monitored by doctors so that the experiment was successful. Through severe pain, he grinned and told them to continue because the guy could stand it. After the experiment, the gray-haired old man explained to the guy that he received the strong body of a predator, but the fusion of cells was insufficient, and he never received any second ability. He was disappointed in this, because despite the fact that the soldier survived, the experiment was a failure. The unknown man continued to say that in order to create an artificial predator body with double strength, they are still missing one thing. This is Ben's body, the dark infinity crystal. Preparing for the blow and concentrating energy in his hand, the hero asked the enemy how he managed to take the form of a predator and remain sane. He also wanted to find out who the guy's boss was and what their goal was. But the warrior, resigned to defeat, refused to tell Ben the truth. He just said that according to his calculations, the hero cannot be his opponent, and he is very curious why he is so much stronger than expected. Ben only replied that he simply had an extraordinary talent. It seems that the conversation was over. But suddenly the clouds thickened and rain began to fall from the sky, signaling that a thunderstorm was about to begin. The guy was surprised by this phenomenon. He realized that today God is on his side. Feeling a surge of strength, the predator asked Ben if he knew why lightning strikes when it rains. But the hero did not listen to him. He was preparing to strike the final blow by asking what the guy's last words would be. A crack of lightning was heard in the sky. At that moment the god of thunder attracted the natural elements to himself, directing his strike. Suspecting that something was about to happen, Jenna headed to her owner. She shouted to her master that it was dangerous, and that he should leave. There was a roar and a huge bolt of lightning struck from the sky, directed towards where Ben stood. The lightning didn't hit him because something pushed him away, and he fell to the ground without being hurt. A crater formed in the place where the lightning struck. If the hero had been there, then his endless darkness would not have saved him. The dust raised by the impact began to clear, and Ben began to come to his senses. At that moment he realized what had happened, and saw a terrible picture that plunged him into horror. He saw Jenna in the place where lightning struck. The girl defended her master by throwing him back and taking the blow on herself. Unfortunately, after that she showed no signs of life. The god of thunder was already heading towards the hero, saying that the girl ruined his plan because she was ready to die for her master. The lightning gave him enough energy to recover. It seems even the heavens helped him in this battle. Ben flew into a rage. An aura of endless darkness began to surround him. He could not believe that Jenna gave her life for him. The hero jumped to the offender with lightning speed, shouting that he would kill him. The god of thunder was not afraid of the guy, but only directed his electric tentacles in his direction to protect himself. The tentacles pierced Ben's body. Blood began to appear from all parts of the body. But the guy did not feel pain because he was intoxicated with rage. He was getting closer and closer to the enemy, and the tentacles were piercing parts of his body more and more. The predator thought the guy was crazy for still trying to hit him despite the tentacle attack. Ben reached his target, and his blow, in which he put all his strength into, flew right into the face. With the force of the blow, the hero slammed the predator into the ground. At that moment everything ended for him. Due to the enormous power, Ben traveled some more distance together with the enemy, leaving behind only piles of stones that shattered into smithereens. The rain continued to pour, but the elements would no longer help the god of thunder. Because such a blow could not be survived, the guy put all his strength and rage into it. The predator was hanging on the wall of the crater, and his head was firmly pressed into the ground so that he could not get out of there. Finally, Ben told him that it doesn't matter who he is and who is behind this guy. After all, he will find them one by one until he completely destroys them. Purple balls began to appear from the guy's body. It was all his energy. She went to Ben so that he would absorb the strength and abilities of his opponent. But then he was struck by lightning, which went through his entire body. The guy trembled. He did not expect such an effect from the energy of the god of thunder. The whole body was permeated with wild pain. It felt like 1,000 needles were piercing his body from the inside. From such force Ben could not stand it and lost consciousness, remaining lying with Jenna in the rain in a dangerous forest. The girl handed a bottle of water to the guy, offering to freshen up. This was one of the hero's memories. She asked him if he really wanted to take part in competitions, because they could be quite dangerous. Ben was surprised by this question, because everyone keeps saying that he needs to become king. As a guard, Jenna wanted him to be sympathetic, but as a friend, she didn't want him to get hurt. The guy was shocked by the girl's confession, because he thought that everyone considered him a tool for Kel's revenge. He did not know that Jenna cared about him with all her heart. The girl stood up from the bench and stated that since she was not a Protos guard, she could also apply to participate in the competition. And so Jenna will go with the owner, so she won't have to worry about him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Protos, two people were discussing something among themselves. The girl in the red velvet kimono said that their operation had failed and the signal had disappeared. She thought that with the power that the Thunder God had, it was impossible to lose. Was it possible that they had the wrong information about Ben's power? The gray-haired old man slowly said that perhaps they were missing something. Most likely, someone else went with the guy and is helping him in this competition. The girl was surprised, because she thought that only 4 bodyguards were with him. The old man, angry at the failure, said that they shouldn't think about it now, because there were 4 days left before the start of the selection, so the girls should go after the corpse of a predator who lost in battle. Suddenly the girl's figure found 2 heroes who were lying at the bottom of the crater without strength. It was Eliza. She understood that while the hero was unconscious, this was an excellent chance to kill him and terminate the marriage contract. She slowly approached the wounded body of the guy. He still did not move and could not defend himself. Eliza prepared to attack to finish off the guy, but at that moment she for some reason began to hesitate. It seemed to her that the guy was blaming her for what she was trying to do now. The girl struck and blood poured out in all directions. She pierced the abdominal cavity and grabbed the heart with her hand, which she then tore out. But not from Ben's chest, but from the chest of a zombie who snuck up on her from behind. The smell of the blood of the heroes brought a crowd of dead people who were eager to feast on fresh flesh. She turned to the guy and said that she was helping him only because he himself was not able to fight. Eliza began to fight monsters. She killed zombies one by one. They were not her rivals, so it was easy. After Eliza dealt with all the opponents, she said that it doesn't matter how many there are because they are too weak. But suddenly the ground shook under the girl's feet. It felt like an earthquake had started. A huge monster, the size of a 5-story building, emerged from the ground. On his head he had a helmet that looked like a knight's, and he was emitting steam from his mouth. Eliza was shocked by the size of the creature. She wondered who it was. It was a demon-level predator called the Arbiter, and he was furious that the girl dared to attack his minions. He quickly raised his hand above his head, condemning the girl to death. The referee's hands fell on Eliza like a meteorite falling to the ground. Everything around shook from such a colossal force of impact. But the girl was fast. As always, she managed to dodge the attack. Jumping towards the tree, Eliza sharply pushed off from it to fly towards the referee. She was faster than the giant, so she was sure that he would not have time to evade her attack. But the referee managed to put his hand in front of him, and the girl crashed into it. He threw her to the ground. It seems that the enemy was not so simple, and defeating him would be more difficult than a crowd of zombies. The arbitrator shouted so that the girl did not contradict him. She landed next to the crater where the heroes lay, but was not seriously injured. There were only a couple of bruises and scratches on her. Eliza thought about the fact that the level of a predator depends on how many people he ate. Having eaten 100, he will get a ghost level, but this one was many times stronger than such predators. Was he really able to eat 1,000 people and reach the demonic level? The monster did not wait and rushed to attack. Attacking, he constantly repeated that he was condemning her to death, and then the girl realized that the attack was not directed in her direction. The Arbiter attacks the unconscious Jenna and Ben. A hail of blows, called divine punishment, rained down from the sky. The force was so great that the earth literally rose into the air, and the stones crumbled like cookies. The arbitrator shouted that no one could escape his justice and was preparing for a new attack. His rage knew no bounds. He struck for the last time at the place where our heroes were. That's all. The battlefield looked like a field after a meteor shower, and the referee was confident that he had won. But as soon as the dust settled, he saw the hooves of the creature standing over Eliza, who seemed unharmed by the blows, like the heroes who lay unconscious. The creature exhaled steam, and the referee was surprised that he was able to stop its attack. It was a macho rhinoceros, a ghost-level predator, receiving ferocious and strong blows he enjoyed. The more you beat him, the more he gets excited. After all, he was useful to Eliza. The girl thought that she couldn't leave the heroes here because Ben once saved her, which means now it's her turn to help him. The rhino provoked the predator to attack him more and more. The arbitrator was surprised by such a non-standard creature. He immediately rushed to attack. But the rhinoceros just wanted this. He received pleasure every time the predator struck him. Eliza understood that although the macho man is persistent, everything has its limit, and over time they will lose. Therefore, it was necessary to act while there was time. She took out another creature card from her pocket. The referee continued to beat the defender. He longed for the death of the rhinoceros, and hit him again. But at that moment, Eliza used the ability of visual exchange, inhabiting the body of her beast. The referee froze, because his gaze was directed into the macho's eyes and now he was under the girl's control. He understood that he was much stronger than her, and therefore it would not be possible to restrain him for more than 3 seconds. Suddenly, a voice was heard behind the predator's back, shouting that 3 seconds would be enough for them to deal with him. A whirlwind flew into the arbitrator and passed through the creatures. It was Elisa's phoenix, which she summoned while the monster struck at the rhinoceros. He was not ready for this. Now there was a huge hole in his chest, because of which he lost his balance and his strength. The referee fell to the ground with a crash without showing any signs of life. The girl was glad that they won. It seemed that after such a wound the monster would not be able to continue the fight. But the phoenix warned that it was too early to rejoice, because the predator just fell, but did not die yet. Now he is unconscious from his injuries, but it will return to him pretty soon. After all, he had a unique ability to exploit. With its help, he can enslave creatures located on his territory and appropriate their life energy. Therefore, if you continue to fight him on his territory, you will not be able to defeat him, because he will constantly supply himself with energy. In this case it is better to move away while there is time. Eliza didn't like what the phoenix said. She was not used to fleeing from the battlefield. The 4th day of the first round of selection for the Protos Guard has arrived. Our heroes took refuge in the rock after a difficult battle. Ben woke up with a start, screaming Jenny's name, his eyes still filled with the fight she had fought to protect him. He didn't immediately understand where he was and how he got here, but fortunately for him he saw a girl lying next to him. Jenny was still breathing, albeit with difficulty. She was covered in wounds, and a green healing aura glowed around her. Next to the girl there was some animal that was intensively waving its paws. It was a white hedgehog, a low-level predator. He was a very cute furry animal, who was casting some kind of spell right now. Ben was worried about the girl, and he was afraid that this beast was now doing something to her. Suddenly the little predator jumped up and grabbed the girl's chest. It seems he was excited about something. The hero was outraged by this picture. He asked the animal where he put his paws. But then Eliza appeared and told Ben not to scare the baby, because he had been healing their wounds all this time. The guy asked the girl why she protected them, to which she replied that she did not want to remain in debt to the hero. If she saw them being devoured by predators, she would have nightmares. Ben was concerned about Jenny's condition. He asked if she could be cured, to which Eliza replied that she very much doubted it. People don't usually live with these types of injuries, but her pulse is fine. The wounds are very serious, and even if she recovers, she will not live long. Pain and resentment crept into Ben's heart, because the girl suffered because she protected him. He quickly jumped to his feet, and the air around him became electric. He asked Eliza if she could help him for Jenny's sake. He was filled with rage. He wanted to find those who did this to the girl. A month earlier, Kel told the guy that Ben had little time to train, but the king would tell everything he knew about his ability. Training will take place in this room instead of sleep. The hero realized that this was necessary so that others would not notice his progress. Kel was surprised that the guy figured out why no one should see Ben's abilities. While eating an apple, the hero said that he became the subject of discussion when he entered the city and used endless darkness. If they see him using it again, then a hunt will begin for him. The guy still thought that Kel would tell him to have fun to the fullest and have fun from the heart. In addition, because of the marriage contract, Eliza also wants him dead. He assumed that the king knew that this would happen. If he just goes to sign up for the qualifiers, then the guy's plan will be immediately figured out. Otherwise the hero may not live to see the start of the qualifiers. He also added that Kel most likely expected that the guy would take part for the sake of a beautiful girl. After listening to everything Ben said, the king said that for an 18-year-old guy he thinks very well. The end of the first round of selection for the Protos Guard has come. The hero was sitting on a tree in ambush. He assumed that whoever was behind the attackers would want to remove the corpse and evidence in order to continue to remain in the shadows. His plan was to catch the person who would come for the corpse and interrogate him. And he was right. Suddenly a refined figure of a girl appeared at the crater. She was wearing a very beautiful red dress, and in her hand she was clutching a weapon that looked like a sickle. It was Vanessa, the master at arms, who swung her sickle and directed its chain towards the corpse. A chain wrapped around the dead thunder god and pulled him out of the crater. The corpse fell next to the girl. She laughed at the deceased, because he was turned into a predator, and he was still weak. Still, she admired Ben's strength and wanted to get to know him better. Suddenly the air became electrified, and a lightning bolt was moving toward the girl. Ben tried to concentrate and release energy from his finger for the first time. It turned out to be not so difficult. The guy completely mastered the power of the last defeated enemy. When the dust began to clear, he saw a strange shield from which the remains of lightning emanated. Behind him was a girl who said that she could change the type of her weapon at will. This is her SR rank ability. She appreciated Ben's resourcefulness to ambush the one who would come for the corpse. The guy was filled with rage. At that moment an electric aura appeared around him, which tore his shirt to shreds. He demanded that the girl immediately tell him who was behind her. Ben's power was so high that the released lightning struck the sky and all nearby creatures could hear the thunder. Vanessa realized that she had underestimated the guy, because he was able to master the ability of her former ally in just a few days and release such a powerful electrical charge. This time she decided to more thoroughly test the hero's abilities, rushing into the attack. Her weapon turned into a dragon crescent. The girl shouted that if Ben wanted to find out who she was working for, he should force her. Swinging her spear, she delivered her first blow, which seemed to be intended to hit the guy without a weapon. But Ben stopped the attack by creating a sword made of electricity. He shouted that since the girl uses weapons, he will use them too. Vanessa was surprised that the guy was able to create a weapon from lightning. Suddenly the battlefield was surrounded by smoke. The girl turned her spear into a smoke bomb. The smoke cleared, and the hero stood all alone holding two lightning swords in his hands. He looked around in search of the enemy, but could not find him anywhere. The guy wondered where the girl who had just attacked him had disappeared. In the distance from him flashed the sight of a sniper rifle aimed at him. It was a Sky Seeker, a rifle that Vanessa turned her weapon into. The girl was an assassin with incredible accuracy, and right now she was aiming for Ben's head. Vanessa acts without fear and without delay, and her smile hides her intentions. And as soon as her opponents relax, she will immediately shoot you in the head. A loud shot rang out, and the bullet headed towards the hero with great speed. Ben stood motionless, and suddenly he kicked the ground, lifting a small pebble into the air. The bullet bounced off the stone, and the hero was again covered in an electric field, because he realized where his enemy was hiding. The girl was shocked that he changed the trajectory of the bullet with a pebble. It seemed impossible to her. The guy combined his two swords into one, and said that he knows how to stand against a sniper, and now it's his turn to attack. He swung his electric harpoon and threw it towards Vanessa with great force. The heavenly spear immediately overtook the stunned girl. Its power was so high that it plowed the ground behind it. She was taken by surprise. She realized that Ben was much stronger than last time, and all that could protect her was the sacred shield. There was an explosion, the noise of which spread throughout the entire area along with the sound of lightning. Vanessa was sitting on the ground. She was able to take cover with her ability, but her shield was broken and there were no more weapons left. She trembled and experienced a new feeling that she had never experienced before. It was a feeling of humiliation. The girl thought that the guy was stronger than her, and at the same time Ben was slowly approaching his opponent. Suddenly he began to unfasten his belt. Vanessa did not expect this from the guy. She asked him what he was going to do right now. With a grin on his face, the hero replied that since she doesn't want to tell who she works for, and death for her would be an easy way out, then he will do something else. The girl trembled. Is Ben really going to do what she thinks? He took off his belt and threw it on the ground, saying that they were alone here, and the girl was too charming. If he did something wrong, she would not be offended. Vanessa, embarrassed, began to crawl away from the guy, and he continued to talk about how his bodyguards say that he is the best of men, and the girls of the brothel cannot get enough of it when he comes. Various vulgar thoughts flashed through the girl's head about what would happen now. Vanessa thought that today she would not only be offended by her defeat, but would also be defamed. She was very embarrassed. The picture she presented did not make her happy. The girl screamed when Ben began to unbutton his pants. Out of despair, she agreed to tell who she works for as long as the hero doesn't come near. She works for a mysterious old man, the Dean of the Academy of Sciences, Mr. Herbert. The guy was surprised by the answer. Because the Protos throne should not worry the old man, why then does he want to kill Ben? The embarrassed girl explained that it's not about the throne, but about the hero's ability. It's all about the origin of the ability Endless Darkness. The abilities of the Guardians and Predators originate from a meteorite, which is stored in the Academy of Sciences. The Dean used it to turn guards into predators and create powerful warriors. But the experiment failed. They acquired the bodies of predators, but also adopted their bloodthirstiness, which means the transformation effect was unstable. Ben realized that one of these was sent to kill him. Now it is not surprising that he lost. The girl replied that the experiment was unsuccessful not because of this, but because the power of the meteorite was imperfect and the guards were unable to gain abilities. The hero assumed that since the Dean was hunting him, it meant that Ben's ability could make the force perfect. Vanessa confirmed his guess. The Dean found two cores in the meteorite, a core of light and darkness. The ability of light is radiation, and the ability of darkness is absorption, and if they are combined, the meteorite will gain full power. The endless darkness that is in Ben is the core of darkness. With this core, the Dean will be able to create an artificial predator with a strong ability. Ben asked why all this was needed. The girl replied that in order to strengthen the Protos guard and resist the many predators outside the city. The guy did not expect to hear such nonsense. He could not believe that the girl believed this lie. After listening to the story, Ben stood up and buttoned up his pants. He said that he had a friend at the academy, and he had to make sure of Vanessa's words. The girl was surprised that the hero simply leaves and is not going to kill her despite the fact that she is a witness. The hero noticed Vanessa's look and asked why she was against his leaving. Did she really expect Ben to finish what he started? Vulgar thoughts flew through her head, and she embarrassedly replied that she didn't expect anything. Suddenly a huge fist flew towards the guy, which Vanessa noticed, shouting at Ben to turn around. The guy turned around sharply and stopped the attack with one hand, as if he was expecting it. It was the Arbiter who regained his strength after the battle with Eliza. He was surprised that the guy repelled the attack so easily, but Ben calmed him down by answering that the point was not that the Arbiter was slow, but that the hero was too strong. A violet aura concentrated around Ben, which indicated that the guy had begun to use his ability to absorb the enemy's forces. The monster felt his strength leaving him. He hoped that his ability to restore energy would save him, but nothing could help him. He began to dissolve in the air, and his helmet fell from his head, showing us the true face of the predator. Vanessa was surprised that the monster couldn't even hit the guy. Now she saw how endless darkness works. And not only the predator is weakening, all the plants around began to emit violet energy and die at the same time. After using the ability, all that was left of the demonic level predator was his helmet, and the plants in the area withered away. An entire section of the forest has been depleted, and Ben has now become many times stronger. This amazed the girl. The guy turned around and started to leave, saying goodbye that he couldn't waste time here, because the last day of the qualifiers was about to end. Vanessa jumped up and stopped the guy, saying that she couldn't go back to the Dean after telling about him, because he would kill her. Now she has nowhere to go, and she asked Ben to take her with him. The hero did not expect to hear this from his former enemy. Now he did not know what was the right thing to do. At the same time, somewhere in Protos, two figures were discussing the qualifiers. The girl said that in the first round, out of 33 people, only 8 remained alive. Count Dracula was disappointed by the result he heard. He expected that more participants would be able to pass the test. The director hurried to cheer up her master. She said that in addition to bad news, there was also good news. In the territory chosen for the competition, 3 demon-level predators were destroyed. The Count was interested in what was said. He asked who these 3 fighters were who achieved such success. The director replied that, judging by the data, the first person to defeat the predator was the Eye Soul Eater Daniel. The second was the owner of the Hellfire ability Adam. Well, the third was Ben, the owner of the ability Endless Darkness, and also the most interesting contender in this competition. There was barely a smile on the Count's face. He was very interested in these people. The clock on the tower made a sound, signaling that the first stage of the qualifiers was over and it was time to bring the fighters back. In the forest where Ben and Vanessa were, a portal appeared. The guy once again asked the girl if she wanted to go with him, to which she agreed. In the cave where Jenna lay unconscious, a portal also appeared. Eliza realized that time was up, and Ben never returned. A portal also appeared in the lost places in front of the Ice Lord, and he slowly walked towards it. On the swamp of the dead on the mountain of corpses sat Adam, who was disappointed that time was up, because he had not yet played enough. Suddenly a strange figure with a tail appeared in front of him, which was covered with designs reminiscent of tattoos all over his body. Adam was delighted with the new opponent. He thought that he was very lucky to fight again before the portal closed. A voice sounded in the guy's head, saying that behind Adam there was a portal leading to the city. The fiery fighter was outraged by what was said. He did not understand what the predator wanted. The voice in his head intensified and asked the guy to let him through the portal. Suddenly, Adam's entire body was covered with wounds, from which blood flowed in streams. There was an explosion and the fighter was torn into hundreds of small pieces. Adam fell to his knees from the picture he saw. It was an illusion. He began to choke from the piercing cold and fear that gripped his whole body. The fighter stood up sharply, trying to understand who was standing in front of him. At first he thought that it was a demonic-level predator. But then he realized that they become larger depending on the people they eat, and this one was similar in physique to a person. Is this really a spiritual-level predator? This level is obtained by those predators who have eaten 100 of their relatives of the demonic level. This species is extremely rare. The hero was seized with fear. He destroyed the bracelets that were on his hands. The guy understood that under no circumstances should he be allowed into the portal. Otherwise the consequences are difficult to imagine. In the places where Adam's bracelets had recently been, dragon tattoos appeared that began to glow with red flame. His hands caught fire and formed 2 fireballs, with which the guy rushed to attack. The legendary predator assessed the strength of the enemy. He thought that such power was quite great for such a boy. Adam joined his hands to carry out one powerful attack. A fiery wave flew out in the direction of the predator. The stream of dragon flame was so powerful that all that was left of the trees in the way were burnt stumps, and the water instantly boiled. All that was left of the forest was a huge burning crater, and the guy was sure that he had defeated the enemy. This was his strongest ability, and no matter who he fought, this move would turn anyone into ashes. But suddenly a fog began to thicken around Adam, looking like hundreds of ghosts. One of them started flying into the unsuspecting guy's mouth. The fog dissipated, flying into Adam's body. His pupils turned white, and he lost his mind. In place of the human pupils, the pupils of a predator appeared, which attacked the fighter. Now this body belonged to the legendary monster. 5 minutes later, all the heroes gathered in the arena of the sacred mountain. Adam was the last one to leave the portal. He left as if nothing had happened. A screen appeared in front of the fighters in the arena, on which was Count Dracula. He congratulated everyone on passing the first round, but asked the participants not to rejoice ahead of time. After all, the second test will be much more difficult. The remaining 8 people will take part in the elimination competition, and only 2 of the participants will become Protos guards. All fighters will be given 1 month to rest, and when the time comes, the whole city will gather to watch the fight of the candidates. Ben thought that Jenny wouldn't have time to recover in a month, and Vanessa looked enviously at the girl who was hanging on the guy's neck. Count Dracula also added that the fighters had already been divided into pairs and wished everyone good luck. The participants were surprised that they would not draw lots, and the organizers themselves chose who they would fight against. Everyone came to the screen to see their opponents. Eliza saw that her opponent was Jenna. She was upset because victory over a wounded opponent would not honor her. But in the semifinals she will be able to fight Ben. He seems to have become stronger. But the girl believed that he had no chance against her. She also thought that if she suddenly lost, she would have to marry him. She turned around to look at the guy who stood there looking stupid and picking his nose. Eliza turned away sharply, saying that the hero was watching her. But Ben did not understand why she was angry with him. Daniel also looked at the board. His opponent was Adam. Looking towards the guy, he thought that he had a strong opponent. However, the fighter's energy is now not the same as before. The predator in Adam's body turned around, sensing a strange aura that came from the far corner of the building. This aroma was calling to him, and the source of this aura was far beyond the arena. Adam went outside. The monster inside him thought that he had been wandering for exactly 10 years. He traveled to every corner of the continent, but this aura was nowhere to be found. The only place where the predator has not been is Protos, the surviving city which he could not get into due to a huge wall and defenders. The predator felt that he was really here, the source of the origin of his brothers and all abilities. Gift of Light, a meteorite that fell to Earth long ago, and is now in the Academy of Sciences. If the monster can obtain it, then he will finally surpass the spiritual level. He will achieve perfection and then the whole world will obey him. After several days of completion of the qualifiers, a scandal was brewing in the central hospital of Protos. The doctor fearfully stated that they had done everything possible, but Jenny's health was not improving and the doctors could not help anymore. In front of him stood angry heroes who asked if the doctor had done everything, because they doubted it. Suddenly Sarah appeared behind the robbers, who saved the doctor by ordering the guys to calm down. She said there was one person who could help Jenna. The little demon immediately asked who he was. She wanted to bring him to the girl, but Sarah replied that this was impossible. Leia immediately clarified how strong this person was. They were already ready to move out. Lucy was disappointed that some doctor could be stronger than her. Sarah explained that this person is not a doctor, he is an S-rank guard, and also the strongest person in the Protoss at the moment. The power of his mind is perfect, and if he agrees to cure Jenny, she will surely be healed. It's just a pity that he retired many years ago and disappeared without a trace. They tried to find him, but to no avail. Vanessa interrupted the crowd's conversation, saying that he is a master of mind flow control. His age is 56 years old, and his height is 188 centimeters. His ability is the most common N rank, but he perfected it and became a master. After Kel's death, he could have controlled the Protoss, but he was never interested in power. He voluntarily gave up the right to rule the city, so the right to rule passed to Count Dracula, the next most powerful guard. Now he lives on the top of a snowy mountain away from everyone. Sarah was surprised by this information. How could the girl know it? But the little demon looked at Vanessa incredulously, because recently they had been enemies. The girl replied that the dean has his own secret informants, so he knows everything about the guards, and now Vanessa is in Ben's squad, so there is no point in lying to her. She also added that the guard has a strange character, and it is unclear whether he will agree to save Jenny. Suddenly Ben spoke. He said that he would find him and take the girl to the mountains. The guy promised that for her sake he would seize any opportunity to keep her alive. After some time, the hero went to the top of the sacred mountain. He climbed the snowy slope for a long time. On his back was Jenna, whom he wrapped in his robe. After some time, the heroes finally found the guard's house. They were exhausted and frozen from the cold. Suddenly Ben saw a familiar animal peacefully building a snowman near the house. The animal also noticed the guy and was not particularly happy to see him. At that very second he forgot about his hobby and rushed into the house to escape from the one who once scared him in the cave. But suddenly a snowball fell in front of him, which scared the baby. It was Ben. He immediately blocked the little healer's path, saying that it seemed they had already met before. The hero asked why Eliza's pet is here. Because this is the house of the master of mind flow control. The kid trembled with fear. He could not do anything with such a formidable opponent. But then the figure of a man appeared from behind the house, who said that the guy not only broke into his house without an invitation, but also hurt his pet. The figure came completely around the corner, and Ben was surprised that the snow underneath it instantly evaporated. It was an S-rank Protoss guard, master of mind flow control, Kevin. He was not happy with our hero, and said that the guy did not belong here. Ben at that moment was amazed at the strength of the guard. He felt this aura, under which the snow was melting. It was as if the man was surrounded by a protective mantle, which if you touched, you would immediately dissolve. Suddenly a girl appeared from around the corner, and asked her father who he was talking to and who had come to visit them. It was Eliza, who was surprised that Ben came to her house. The hero was even more amazed that this was the girl's house, and this strongest guard was her father. Some time later Ben and Jenny were in the man's house. The guy persuaded the guard to help the girl because only he was capable of this. Eliza watched this whole performance. She could not believe that Ben had come all this way for Jenny. The guy firmly stated that he would pay any price to save his girlfriend. Tired of listening to the hero's story, Kevin calmly replied that he refused to help him. Eliza grinned. She did not expect to hear a different answer from her father. Ben didn't stop. He wanted to know the reason for the refusal. The guy suggested that perhaps it was because the guard's power would suffer if he helped the girl. Kevin replied that actually saving her was as easy as shelling pears. But these two were nothing to him. There was no point in him helping them. Now he will help them. Then everyone will start turning to him for help. But he doesn't want that. Suddenly Eliza stood up for the heroes, asking her father if he would help Jenna if his daughter asked for it. Kevin was surprised, but the girl explained that Jenny is her rival, and she doesn't want others to consider her victory undeserved. But the only thing that surprised my father was why Eliza was on their side. A couple of minutes later, Kevin and the heroes stood in the room. Jenna was on the bed. The man said that during the treatment his ability would cause cell regeneration. Because of this the girl's temperature would rise, so she needed to be undressed. Ben immediately blushed. Images of Jenny without clothes flashed through his thoughts. A couple of minutes later the girl was completely undressed. She was charming, but still unconscious. The master concentrated energy in his finger and directed it towards the girl. He ordered her to obey and touched her head. At that moment, the girl began to come to her senses, and a green healing aura appeared around her. The guard had a strange feeling. At that moment he felt that the girl was gifted. After a few minutes of treatment, Jenna began to come to her senses. Ben prayed that Kevin could help the girl, and Eliza kept an eye on the guy so that he wouldn't peek. Jenna started sweating and started moving her eyes and jaw. It looked like she was in pain, but she wasn't. The girl came to her senses and began to open her eyes. She felt that she was very hot, but at the same time very light. And then she saw herself completely naked, and she didn't know who did it. She screamed with all her might to the whole house. If not for the storm, her scream would have been heard in the city. Jenna asked what they did to her, and why she wasn't wearing clothes, but Kevin decided to move away from the girl just in case. Squeezing his eyes shut, the master said that Jenna was probably feeling better. Confused Ben, who tried his best not to look, thanked the guard for his help. The heroes went to their rooms. Eliza showed Ben where he would spend the night, and the guy could finally rest. He turned to the girl and thanked her for helping to persuade her father to cure Jenna. Eliza didn't understand why the guy was so tense for the sake of some bodyguard. She asked him about it. Even she can't climb the mountain without the help of a phoenix. And Ben walked this way on foot, carrying the girl on his back. If a storm started he could easily die. For her sake, the guy risked his future place on the throne. Eliza asked if it was worth it, to which the guy replied that it was worth it. He explained that Jenna is not just a bodyguard, she is his friend. The hero once had several friends, but they all abandoned him. And then he realized that those who care about him will always be on his side even if the whole world turns against him. Jenna risked her life for Ben, and he did the same for her. Eliza turned around and hurried out of the room, saying that she would help them go down the mountain when the girl recovered. Ben thought that perhaps Eliza was jealous. Meanwhile, the recovered girl stood on the terrace and enjoyed the view of the snowdrifts. She did not expect that her master would do so much for her. The realization of this brought her joy. Looking at the snowy landscapes, she remembered how he courageously carried her on his shoulders. Her fantasies were interrupted by a male voice. It was Kevin, who asked if the girl would catch a cold in such cold weather. Jenna turned to him and asked why he was not sleeping yet. The master replied that he could not sleep, so he decided to drink tea with milk. Suddenly he asked the girl if she knew who the gifted ones were. Anyone who is illuminated by a meteorite receives one ability, but there is a tiny chance that there will be two abilities. Such people are called gifted. Jenna is the second person in Kevin's memory who had such a gift, and the girl seemed to understand what the master was talking about. With such wounds, an ordinary person would probably have died, but Jenna was able to survive. The man suggested that one of the protector's abilities is immortality. The girl was embarrassed because she was taken by surprise. She replied that she could not die while the person connected to her was alive, but at that time she was in agony. The master became more and more interested in Jenna's ability. He wanted to find out who this person was. The blonde replied that the ability itself chooses who it will become. It is directly connected with him. The girl senses when this person is in danger, and can even sense his location. And since Kevin saved her, she will answer who it is, but this secret must remain between them. But in return Jenna will have a request. She asked the master to become Ben's mentor. Kevin was not very happy with what he heard. He replied that he was tired of teaching people and was too busy. Jenna looked away and quietly apologized. She didn't think before asking the master about such a thing. Kevin sternly said that he did not want to teach him, but taking into account the path the guy had come here, he would do him one favor. The next day, a phoenix soared in the sky, which, despite a strong storm, flew somewhere quickly. Ben sat on the bird with the master. He asked where they were flying. Kevin pretended not to hear and asked if the guy received the ability from the meteorite. In Protos there are many people with abilities that are often similar to each other. Based on their rarity they are divided into ranks. There are only 5 of them, namely N, R, SR, SSR, UR. Ben has two abilities, UR rank Endless Darkness and SSR rank Thunderclap, but they are not the guy's innate abilities. So today the hero will gain his own ability. Ben realized that they were heading to the Academy of Sciences right now, just in time to find out more about the dean. After some time, the hero and Kevin flew to the doors of the Academy of Sciences. But then they were met by security, who ordered them to stop and say for what purpose they wanted to visit this place. The master sighed and said that he had not been in society for a long time, since people no longer recognize him. One of the guards shouted that if the two men did not need anything, then they should get out of here. The academy was not a place for ordinary walks. Suddenly he took off from the ground and rushed into the air. The guard could not understand what happened to him. Their body did not obey and the entire squad began to levitate in the air as if there was no gravity under them. Their minds were with them, but their bodies were not. One of the guards was surprised that the man did nothing to lift them into the air. He just looked at them and didn't move. Ben was also amazed by this skill, because Kevin did not use any skills, but just stood. But the guy understood what was going on. He felt the aura that he saw when he first came to the master's house. The power of the mind filled the space as if alive. It is not surprising that the snow did not touch it. Suddenly an old man appeared on the threshold, who recognized this unique aura, because it can only belong to one person. It was the dean, who was surprised to see Kevin here, because the man had not been interested in anything related to the city for a long time. The master replied to the old man that his friend had not yet awakened his ability, and he thought that the dean could help with this. Kevin looked at Ben and ordered him to say hello to the dean of the Academy of Sciences. The old man was surprised that the hero, a friend of the strongest Protos guard, he wondered how he could find him if the master lives far from everyone. The blind man understood that the boy killed the god of thunder and kidnapped Vanessa. He probably knows that the dean was pursuing him because of the core of darkness. He also noted that it will not be easy to deal with Ben if Kevin supports him. The hero came closer and said that he heard that there was a meteorite in the academy that could awaken abilities. He would like to see it. The dean coughed and firmly stated that he could not show it, because every use of the meteorite must be agreed with Count Dracula, and the gray-haired man had no personal right to dispose of it. And since Ben is a friend of Mr. Kevin, the old man could put in a good word with the Count. Endless darkness began to thicken around the guy. He decided to solve the problem in a bad way, since nothing worked out in a good way. But suddenly the wind barely blew next to him, and he saw the master who was already standing near the dean. The old man was amazed by the man's speed. He was afraid of what would happen next. Kevin looked at the dean with a gloomy look and in a sepulchral voice ordered them to let them through, because the old man would not contradict him. The dean's mind suggested that it was better not to resist this man. The blind old man smiled sweetly and asked the guests to follow him. The trio walked along the long corridors of the academy. Ben already began to doubt that they were going in the right direction, but the dean reassured him by saying that, although he was blind, he knew the academy like the back of his hand. The hero thought about the fact that the security system here is impressive, because they had already passed 4 posts and before each one the presence of the dean was required. If not for him they would hardly have passed. In addition, the closer they are to the meteorite, the stronger the endless darkness reacts to it. The old man stopped. The meteorite was behind this door. He asked the heroes to listen to his instructions when they go inside. The metal doors slowly opened and the heroes entered the room where the legendary artifact was located. In appearance it resembled an ordinary stone to which different cables were connected. This was the first time Kevin had seen a meteorite with his own eyes, so he asked the dean if this was really the same artifact in front of them. Ben calmly said that it looks like an ordinary stone that doesn't represent anything. The master turned to the guy and began to scold him for not listening to him when Kevin was talking about the meteorite. While the couple was quarreling, the dean thought that before light and darkness were whole and attracted each other, and if Ben came into close contact with the core of light, it could react. If the guy loses himself, the meteorite will merge with him, and when his strength is restored over time, the old man will be able to fulfill his dream and create an army of predators with the abilities. And all this thanks to Kevin, who himself brought the core of darkness into the hands of the dean. His thoughts were interrupted by a fist that slammed right into the guy's face. The master beat the clueless Ben for flying in the clouds and not listening to his elders. After moralizing, Kevin asked the dean to activate the meteorite. After some time, the cables under the meteorite became electrified, and the stone itself, due to electricity, began to emit a bright yellow light. Kevin was wondering what ability Ben would receive, and the Dean hoped that this ability would be rank N. The bright divine light blinded the hero. He more and more ceased to see the source of light itself. After the meteorite was turned off, Kevin asked Ben if he felt any changes in his body. The guy replied that apart from the fact that his eyes hurt from the bright light, everything is the same as before, and he doesn't feel any abilities. He turned to the old man, saying that apparently the Dean did not want the hero to receive a new ability, and therefore led them to a fake meteorite. The blind man was stunned by the boy's impudence. He shouted that it was not his fault, and if Ben uses the meteorite once, this does not guarantee that he will receive new abilities. The guy still pretended to be a fool and said that he still didn't feel anything and apparently the stone was still a fake. The old man was not as stupid as it seemed at first glance. It was not for nothing that he was the Dean of the Academy of Sciences. He assumed that Ben probably had a rare ability. That's why he didn't want to show it. The guy said that they were leaving. He suggested that the mentor go to a place nearby where they make excellent tea with milk. These words pleasantly surprised the master. He replied that he only drinks tea with sugar. Ben also added that they would order coconut pudding. The old man was furious with the hero's impudence. He wanted to kill him right now, despite the fact that the guy was accompanied by the best guard. When the heroes turned their backs to the old man, he pulled out a hidden blade from his cane. The Dean thought that Kevin would not have time to react if he struck right now. He pulled the sword from his cane and swung it to kill the unsuspecting guy, but suddenly he froze in place and could no longer move. Kevin asked the old man if he had forgotten what it was like to cross the path of a master. Realizing that he had lost, the Dean trembled with fear. He knew that the guard was very strong, but he did not think that he would be so strong. Having apologized, the old man put his sword back in its scabbard and decided not to detain the guests any longer. Ben was horrified by how much rage he saw in Kevin's eyes. He understood that if the Dean had not retreated, he would now be dead. Kevin looks harmless, but he hides a huge amount of power. So this is what he is, the strongest man of the Protos. After the incident at the academy, our heroes were heading home on a huge phoenix. Kevin drank his favorite milk tea, which Ben promised him. The guy was surprised how the master drank a whole glass of tea in one gulp. After all, he really loves this drink. The guard turned to the hero and said that now they were alone and Ben could show the ability that the meteorite had endowed him with. Kevin quickly saw through the guy. The hero didn't want to show off his new ability in front of the Dean, so he fooled him. The ability had just awakened and Ben didn't know if he'd be able to show it, because he'd never used it before and he didn't know what it did. Kevin waved his fingers and told the guy to stand still and not move. He decided to penetrate his mind and see for himself what kind of ability the boy had. The master concentrated to find the place where it was hidden. Inside the guy's mind, he saw hundreds of demonic eyes that were watching him. Kevin suggested that the place where Ben's ability is hidden is connected to an evil spirit. The ability to control evil spirits is extremely rare, but what rank it is depends only on the rank of the spirit. Suddenly he noticed an ominous creature that was watching him. The master turned around and saw that the monster was huge. The man demanded that the spirit tell him his name and show himself to him. The monster was of colossal size. His voice echoed throughout the entire space, and his name was Asur. Ben was already tired of standing in one place and not moving. He was looking forward to the master finishing his ritual. Opening his eyes, Kevin said that the boy was very lucky. Ben was delighted with these words and suggested that the meteorite had given him the ability of the gift of light. The master just grinned, because this ability is the treasure of the Protos. But the guy's ability is also extremely rare. It is not only strong, but also associated with evil spirits. So Kevin lingered in the guy's mind and taught the demon a lesson. This ability has an SSR rank and is called Azura Spirit. Ben was disappointed by the simple name of his new skill, to which the master replied that it was a cool name. He also added that this spirit is extremely strong. Like his thoughts, if you resort to his help, he can rebel against Ben. Therefore, unless absolutely necessary, the master advised the guy not to use it. A month has passed since Ben awakened his new ability, and today all the Protos residents climbed the sacred mountain to get to the arena. After all, this is the most important day of the year, but not only because of the final competitions. What is more important is that in addition to the candidates themselves and the spectacular fights, they will also be here. S-rank Protos guards will be present in the arena. 2 guards had already arrived at the performance. It was Count Dracula and the director of the competition. The audience was happy to see such people live, because before that they had only seen them on TV. The director asked why the Count arrived so early. After all, he is the most important person in the Protos, and it is common for him to be a little late. The Lord drank blood-colored wine, the same as his robe. He answered the girl that he did not like to wait. It reminded him of waiting for the moon to appear from the clouds. Suddenly the Count heard something move above him. He immediately realized that someone was sitting on top, because it is difficult to remain motionless while sitting on a canopy. The fabric began to boil like boiling blood and the Count's crown appeared from it. Going upstairs, he noticed Kevin and said that he expected to see him here despite the fact that such events were not interesting to the old master. The Count suggested that this was probably due to the fact that his daughter took part in competitions. Kevin was still calm and answered the bishop that this was not entirely true. There's just a tea discount today, and they also have a giant pearl milk tea. The man suggested that the Count try it, but he refrained, answering that sugar accelerates aging. Kevin was indignant and advised to live for today, because the Count and the master were the same age, but the ruler looks younger because he takes care of his appearance. Suddenly the men heard the clicking of heels. It seemed that someone was approaching the arena. It was a woman dressed in a red dress with a large neckline, and pearls sparkled around her neck. Coming closer, she asked what her old comrades were chatting about, and it seemed the headmistress was not happy about the lady's appearance. It was the leader of the Milky Way faction, Archangel Mary, and she was wondering if the warriors were discussing who, besides her son, would become the new protector of the Protos. Smiling evilly, Principal May asked if the woman was confident in her son, because it was unknown how her presence would affect him. Mary said that she was his mother, and her presence would not harm her son, to which May sarcastically replied that she once left him with his father, and he was unlikely to be happy to see her. The Count and Kevin, watching the spectacle, simultaneously wondered why these women always quarrel. Mary got really angry and ordered the headmistress to keep her mouth shut. After all, May is no one to her, and she doesn't dare judge her. The girls exchanged gloomy glances that showed hatred for each other, after which May replied that she simply decided to remind her of what she had done. They raised a cry to the entire Colosseum. One said that the director had so much to do that he couldn't get a promotion to S rank. The second asked what was wrong with that, and was Mary really proud of her rank. The men just listened peacefully to these cries and were silent. One of the spectators asked her friend why these two were arguing, to which she replied that she only knew the rumors that were circulating about Mary. They say she abandoned her child and seriously ill husband to become the leader of some faction. Many in the city call her corrupt. Besides, she doesn't seem to have any abilities, and she got S rank with the help of Kel. The girl felt sorry for Daniel, because he is so handsome, but has such a cruel mother. Suddenly, behind them, the voice of a guy was heard, who heard only the word beautiful in their conversation. It was Michael, an S-rank guard, the personification of the 7 sins. He asked the girls if they were talking about him. Suddenly the girl was hit in the head by a heart that came from a handsome man. At the same moment, she felt her heart beat faster, and she became hotter. She was overcome by passion, and unnecessary thoughts began to arise in her head, which made the girl feel embarrassed. The girl's friend did not understand what was happening, and it seems that the spectators sitting nearby also noticed that something strange was happening. And the guy just smiled, thinking that the girl was still very lustful. Suddenly a woman's voice behind him told him to stop bullying the girl. He turned around, seeing his old friend, and asked if she wanted to feel real pleasure. The heart that made the previous girl beat in agony crashed into the face of an unknown woman and broke without having any effect. It was Kathleen, a paladin guard of S rank, the sweetest girl with purple hair. She was clutching a sword in her hands, and was dressed in knightly armor. She told the guy that his charms wouldn't work on her. Yet again he tries, but still doesn't understand it. Disappointed, the guy turned around and snapped his fingers, canceling the effect of his love spell to free the girl. He also reasoned why his spell did not work on the paladin. The charming girl asked menacingly what the guy was whispering. He awkwardly turned around and said that he simply admired the beauty of the girl. Kathleen got a little embarrassed and told Michael to shut up. The guy also noticed the girl's slight embarrassment and smiled sweetly back at her. An hour later, May asked for a minute of attention in order to make a ceremonial speech. She announced the start of the qualifying competitions. The crowd screamed enthusiastically at the same moment, and the entire Colosseum began to roar. The headmistress asked the participants to enter the arena and 8 contenders appeared on the battlefield. The crowd rejoiced because an unforgettable sight awaited them ahead. All participants slowly entered the arena. Many were waiting for this fight, and some wanted to finish the competition as soon as possible. Ben was supported from the stands by the girls who were on his team. The guy wanted to wave at him, but then the little demon shouted that if he loses, he might not return home. This phrase confused the hero. This was not the kind of support he was expecting. Ben asked Jenna where Sarah is now because she is not in the stands next to everyone. The girl replied that she could not come because she was on duty at the academy. The guy thought that most likely the dean deliberately detained her at work, because he knew that the girl was his friend. Not only did they come to cheer for Ben, Daniel's mother saw her son and thought about how much she missed him. They crossed glances, the cold gaze of the son and the enthusiastic gaze of the mother. The woman was glad that her son looked at her. They had not seen each other for a very long time and perhaps he had already forgiven her. But Daniel turned away as if he didn't see anything, and his mother chanted from the stands that he would succeed because she loved him. May began to explain the rules to the participants. Firstly, the opponent must either lose consciousness or be immobilized for 10 seconds, and secondly, he must admit defeat. If there is a threat to the life of a participant, the headmistress will interrupt the fight. Ben began to yawn while listening to the rules. He asked if it was possible to start the fight already. He had had enough of showing his abilities. Jenna was worried because the guy looked tired. Maybe he didn't get enough sleep. Kevin was also worried, but for a different reason. He assumed that the hero was tired due to the fact that he did not listen to the advice of the master. The headmistress announced the first battle between the owner of the Endless Darkness technique and the Protos warrior James. The contenders entered the arena and prepared for battle. A gong sounded announcing the start of the fight. A little boy on the podium asked his mother if the uncle in the raincoat was strong, to which the woman replied that he was a frequent guest at the qualifiers and among ordinary people he was the strongest. The warrior in armor, warming up, said that he had been taking part for exactly 5 years, and every time he encountered a very strong newcomer among his opponents. He thought that this time he would be defeated by the new prodigy Daniel, but strangely enough the gods sent him Ben as his opponent. The hero fell asleep while walking, and the warrior speaking to him stated that his ability would overcome endless darkness. At this moment Ben's eyes glowed purple and he replied that this time he would not use infinite darkness.